All right, recording is started. Okay. Good evening. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So again, like our power plant engineering class, initially, so because this is a 2 hour class today, initially we will just go through the topics that we are going to cover and what are the importance of these topics. And then in the second part, so after a break, short break, we will start discussing about the some of the basic things in CFD, why CFD is required, why it is important, what basically is CFD. Many of you may not be very clear about that also. What exactly is CFD, why it is required, so things like that. And from the next class onward or next to next class onward, we will dive deeper uh, into the methods and problems and mathematics of it. Okay. And again, like I have said in the morning class, the notes will be shared with you, so you don't have to take notes. It is up to you to take notes, but anyway, the notes are being shared with you, and also the video lectures are being recorded and will be uploaded in YouTube. So you will have both the notes plus the discussions. Any discussion or any question answers that are being done will be present in the YouTube lectures. So that should cover all the areas for you. Okay. And after every class, I will put the notes in the file section for your course. Let us do it now itself so that later we don't forget. And you can go through them uh, as and when you have time. Let me just check whether they are getting uploaded correctly and then we'll start. So how many of you have done CFD related problems as a project or side project or say in other courses done some or read some CFD related topic? None of you have done any CFD related work. Why is this class so silent? So you should be more communicative. Like last year's batch was very good in this aspect. The students were also good, and we had lot of question answers during the classes. So anyway, let me just check. So this is their correct. The other one will get uploaded in due course. So you will see that CFD is a very important topic in your subsequent career, depending on which area. Means if you remain in core area, it will be a very important topic, particularly for students who are going to pursue masters or a dual degree students or are going to pursue higher studies in say foreign universities. It becomes very important. Also for students who are going to go to jobs in core areas, there also CFD is very important. Okay. And CFD basically encompasses solution of thermal and flow problems using computational methods, as we will see later today. Just let me switch on. Okay. So using computational methods, how to solve thermal and fluid flow problems. And we will see that thermal and fluid flow problems are coupled together. They cannot be distinguished or cannot be separated directly. They are coupled together. Means the temperature influences the flow field and flow field influences the temperature evolution. So they are solved together and together are part of CFD. So even from job perspective also, again particularly for dual degree students, it is very, very important. Okay, because most of the companies in India, in core areas, most of the companies in India do modeling and simulation work. They don't have the resources for doing large scale experimental work. The large scale experimental work is done in, say, in foreign countries, and the other part of the work, which is modeling simulation, is transferred to India, and India has a very good Indian organizations, or the Indian branches of the multinational companies have very good research talent and research say facilities for doing CFD related work. So CFD is a very important course in that respect. So it is good that you have selected this area, particularly if you want to go for core jobs or for higher studies. Okay. So let me first go through the topics, and then we will come into the details of CFD. What is CFD, and what is the importance of CFD? So the area that we are going to cover today, I hope you can still hear me. Can I get a confirmation?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Feel
Yes,
free to
sir.
ask questions anytime. Okay, feel free to ask questions. Communication should be there too, like both way communication should be there in this video lectures. Otherwise, it feels like I'm just talking to a monitor. It is quite difficult. It's not like a live class where there we can have a very good discussion. I can ask students to draw something on the board or something like that. Okay, here it is not possible. So we have to manage as much as possible so that ultimately you can benefit, you can get the best benefit out of the course, basically. So let us come back to the topic. So we will start with something which are known as basic conservation equations. What are basic conservation equations? Conservation equations for fluid flow, which you have already studied in your fluid mechanics course. These are the Navier-Stokes equation. Okay, so we know that momentum is conserved, and these are the conservation of momentum is governed by Navier-Stokes equation. And in simplified form, these equations can be simplified to very simple equations like Euler equation or Bernoulli equation. But the general equation is Navier-Stokes equation. Then energy conservation, which again you must have studied in heat transfer course. So we know that energy is conserved, and accordingly there are equations for that. So we will see later that the energy equations and momentum equations, they have different terms for different aspects, like unsteady term, convective term, diffusive term, source term. So we will study all this. Then any other chemical species, for example, you have a chemical reaction, combustion process in an IC engine. How you will capture that combustion process, because the concentration of the chemicals are changing. Say concentration of oxygen and concentration of if you are using say propane for burning, or say octane, in case of IC engine you are using octane. So the concentration of octane is changing, concentration of carbon dioxide and water vapor is changing. So how to get those? So again, there are conservation equations for each chemical species. There will be one conservation equation. All these equations are of similar form. Okay, and we will just quickly go through them and see what is the form of these equations and what is the generalized form of any conservation equation. For our course and in general in engineering, we consider mass and energy to be two separate entities. Okay, so we will not consider that mass and energy are coupled together. Any small change of mass due to change in energy is neglected in normal engineering practice, as you know. In only typical or very say niche cases such as nuclear reactions, we know that mass and energy are related together. So whatever energy increase occurs, that will come from a loss of mass. But in our normal day-to-day applications and engineering applications, we are going to consider that energy is separately conserved, mass is separately conserved. We will not consider combined energy mass balance. Okay. So that also we have to keep in mind. And also these problems will be continuum problems. You again know what is continuum? What do you mean by continuum problems? Answers. I need answers to proceed. Means what do we mean by the assumption that the flow domain is satisfies the continuum condition, or heat transfer satisfies continuum condition? You have studied fluid mechanics, heat transfer. What will be the opposite if continuum condition is not satisfied? What will be the
No.
opposite? Yes? You can
Am I audible,
answer.
sir?
Yes.
Sir, continuum means like if the property like it changes little by little, like a continuous function kind of.
Yes. So in other words, if I want to take into consideration the actual example, say you have a flow of air in this room. So for in my room, there's flow of air and some heat transfer. AC is running, so there's some heat transfer that is occurring. If I consider this material as a continuous material, like even if I take a very small volume that itself is continuous, then we can develop the equations based on those assumptions, and then it is known as that continuum assumption is satisfied. On the other hand, in real life, what will happen if you go to a very small volume, you will see that there are individual molecules and molecules of oxygen, molecules of nitrogen, carbon dioxide. Okay, so then in those cases, these molecules are independently moving. They are not moving together like in the same direction or in the same manner. And at that length scale, actually these governing equations that we develop based on continuum assumptions are not valid. Then we have to go for something which are known as statistical mechanics, statistical thermodynamics. So we have to consider the individual atoms, movement of the individual atoms. So in those cases, these continuum assumptions like the Navier-Stokes equation and other equations are not valid. So that is what we mean. Okay. To take into example again of one parameter, say temperature. We know that temperature is like it gives us a measure of how much energy is or sensible heat is contained in a substance. So for example, the air in this room, we know that if we measure the temperature, if the temperature is increased, more sensible energy is there in the air. Okay. But if you go to a very small length scale where continuum assumption is not satisfied, like if I can look at the individual atoms and molecules, in that case you cannot define temperature in that way. In that case, the temperature actually is, what is the temperature? In like what is the analogous of temperature, or what is or how is temperature defined based on actual atomic or molecular properties?
Kinetic energy of
Energy.
Yes, so it is the kinetic energy of the molecules. Okay, kinetic energy can be different. Kinetic energy means it can be say due to linear motion, it can be due to vibration. So overall energy of the molecules. Okay, and in those cases you have to actually solve for the kinetic energy if it is a non-continuum problem, and then you have to individually, then you can add all this. So if I take a very small domain, I may have 100 molecules, I have to solve for them, find the average kinetic energy, and from that predict the average temperature. So these are two different types of methods, but for most general engineering applications we go for continuum based methods, and what that is what you have studied till now in heat transfer, fluid mechanics and thermodynamics. So obviously we will not go into those details, we will just cover the basic equations. Then we will slightly cover or revise partial differential equations, because we will see that all these conservation equations that we have studied are partial differential equations of second order. Okay. I hope you can see the screen. I forgot to ask the question. You can see the screen, right?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. So we will try to understand the physical nature or physical behavior of different types of partial differential equations, and we will try to classify them based on this behavior. We will see that there are three types of PDEs, partial differential equations: hyperbolic PDEs, parabolic PDEs, and elliptical PDEs. And we will just briefly try to understand the nature of behavior of each of them. Okay, and how they influence. So what is the motivation of studying this? Are we randomly just studying partial differential equations? No, it is not that. This nature of behavior will actually make us decide what type of method we need to use for CFD solution of the problem. Depending on the different nature, whether it's a hyperbolic problem or parabolic problem, we decide what type of excuse me, what type of CFD scheme to use to solve that problem. So that's why we want to learn about PDEs. Okay. You must have already studied PD in some mathematics course, but it will be like a brief classification. We will not dive deep into the maths of it, but more about how it is, how its behavior is important for us. Then we will come into something known as discretization. Okay, it will be clear in later in our later class today what is discretization. But if I have to speak in one line, I will say that if you have a large domain like this room, and if we want to solve the flow in this room, in CFD you divide the room into very small parts, which are known as control volumes or grids. So this process of dividing this entire domain into smaller parts and then dividing the governing equation into separate equation for each of the small parts is known as discretization. And there are many methods of discretization. We will learn the most important methods. Two most important methods are the finite difference method and finite volume method. Okay, there is also finite element method, but finite element method is not very much used for solving thermal and fluid flow problems. Finite element methods are very popular for solving structural problems like bending of beams or any other structural problem, deformation problems. In our heat transfer and fluid flow problems, we use finite difference or finite volume method. So we'll study about those. And the rest of the course will be devoted to these two methods. So finite difference method, then how to solve. So we will take the governing equation, a typical governing equation like a heat conduct, like energy balance equation or momentum equation. So typical governing equation, and simplify it to a very simple form and start with the procedure for solving it. Okay, we'll start with 1D transient heat conduction equation, ignoring convection and source terms. Then see different aspects like what is explicit and implicit schemes. This will be clear to you later on. There are different aspects of CFD through which we measure whether the results are correct or not. These are known as consistency, stability, and convergence. We will learn how to solve linear algebraic equations, how this linear algebraic equation comes into picture. In real life, the conservation equations are PDEs. Okay, but while discretization or while discretizing the domain, we convert the PDEs to simple algebraic equations. Okay, we remove the derivatives. The main idea is to remove the derivatives because derivatives cause problems. We remove the derivatives and change them to algebraic terms like ax plus b, like this. Okay. So if you have a set of algebraic equations, say if I have 100 algebraic equations and 100 unknown variables, how to solve them? Okay, 3 equations, 3 unknown variables, you can just solve it manually. But if there are 100 variables and 100 unknowns, you need some kind of matrix inversion or some other method, and that is what we are going to learn. And there are two types of solution technique. One is known as direct method. Okay, but directly you can solve and directly you can get the results. And the second type is known as iterative methods, where you go through some iterations, like again and again solve the problem so that finally you go towards a better and better solution or more towards the correct solution. And there are some advantages of iterative methods. In many cases, direct methods cannot be used, so you have to go for iterative methods. Okay, we'll study about Jacobi method, Gauss-Seidel method, and something known as line by line TDMA. So then the rest of the course will be on finite volume method, which is the most important method in CFD. We will study out 1D steady diffusion problem, then how to treat source terms, then 2D and 3D problems. So after learning about diffusive type of problem, diffusion means conduction type of problems, we will go into convection diffusion problems. Okay, fluid flow effect, what is how to capture the effect of fluid flow. And there are different schemes for that. We will study the most important schemes, fundamental schemes, central difference, upwind, exponential, hybrid, and power law. What are their advantages and disadvantages? Okay. And finally, we will see how to solve the flow field. Solution of flow field is actually quite difficult. It is not as easy as solving other equations, as we will see later. Why it is difficult, I can explain briefly here, but later it will be more clear to you when we study about flow fields. In general, whenever you solve an equation, you have number of unknowns equal to number of equations. Okay, in any problem. Otherwise, you cannot solve the equations correctly, right? So when we solve for flow field, we have four unknowns if it is a 3D problem. You have the u velocity component, you have the v velocity component, w velocity component, and the pressure P. But you have three equations, three momentum equations, the u momentum equation, v momentum equation, and w momentum equation. There is no pressure equation. So solution of pressure is very difficult. How does it, how will we solve the pressure in that case? Where will the extra equation come from? Can anyone say? Three momentum equations? Yes?
Energy equation.
No, energy equation, we have another unknown, temperature. So for that, temperature energy equation is required. So if we want to solve energy equation also, we will have five unknowns, U, V, W, P, and T. Okay, and four equations are there now. Energy equation, one single energy equation, and three momentum equations for three directions. One equation is missing. Can you say which equation?
Flow equation.
Flow equation is there. Momentum equation is the flow equation, right? X, Y, Z momentum equations are the flow equation. What do you mean by separate flow equation?
Sir, we have x, y, z momentum equations and continuity equation. Four equations we have, no?
Continuity equation, correct. I was looking for continuity equation.
Okay.
You have continuity equation, right? Continuity equation is not for momentum balance. The main difficulty is that continuity equation should be used for solving pressure, but there is no pressure term in continuity equation. Okay. So somehow we have to devise some clever strategy to convert this continuity equation into some pressure equation, which is not very easy. So some clever methods have been devised in past, and we will see what are these methods. So some of these methods are simple and simpler method, and we will learn these methods. So it is very difficult to solve actually flow field. Okay, so this is up to this is our syllabus. Generally, I also like to teach at least for the, I have taken the course, this is the third time I am taking the course. I have tried to at least devote a few classes, 2-3 classes on an additional topic, which is not part of the curriculum, but is very important for the students who actually go into CFD solutions using, say, some software like ANSYS, which are the discretization in unstructured grids. So for that, we would like to study what are structured and unstructured grids. And up to this point, up to point 8, whatever we will discuss will be for regular grids. Regular means rectangular grid, square grid, cubical in 3D, rectangular, cuboidal in 3D. Okay. But in real life, the grid can be very haphazard. Okay, it can form multiple triangles of various shapes and sizes. So which are known as unstructured grids. So we will study the differences between structured and unstructured grids and how to discretize for unstructured grids. We will devote 2-3 classes if time permits. Not part of syllabus, but we would like to learn it because it is very important and it gives us an interesting say insight into how the software programs run. Any questions up to this point?
No, sir.
Where were we? Okay. Some other points. Okay. So books for this course, I would suggest that you go with the class notes. Okay, because we are not going to, at least for the first part, we are not going to follow any book in a linear fashion. Okay. So the notes are developed based on various resources for the first part. Once we go to the second or second 60% of the course, the later 60% of the course, the book by Patankar, which is known as Numerical Heat Transfer and Fluid Flow. This book we are going to very closely follow. Okay, starting from this point, starting from say up to from point 5. Okay, point 4 or point 5, and this point onwards, we will follow the 6, 7, 8. This part we will very closely follow the Patankar book. Patankar actually is a very famous book. It was the first written in 1980, and this scientist, his name is Suhas Patankar. He was actually pioneer in this area. He actually developed a lot of CFD algorithms. during his PhD and later work in 1970s. He along with his guide developed this solution of flow field, the simpler algorithm. All of them has been developed by, means invented, you can say, by Suhas Patankar when he was doing his PhD in US. So this is a very fundamental book. It is like more like a notes, very short and small book, and but it is quite costly. So you have to see how to get it. Okay. Otherwise, let me know. The second book is a more recent book by Versteeg and Malala which is more, you can say, more exhaustive, covers more topic. And for the second half of the course, you can also go through this like Malala Sekara book also. And it has more details, but all of them will not be covered in this course. Okay, it's a very introductory course, so all of them will not be covered in this course. But you can, if you want, you can go through it. Okay. It has a lot of, it is not very costly also. So for CFD, remember that it's a very different type of course. Okay, it's not like your normal theoretical course. Although we are learning it here in a manner like a theoretical course, like through lectures. CFD is not actually suited for this lecture-oriented, say, lecture-oriented teaching pattern. Okay, it is more like a practical course. So although we will go through a lot of theory in this course, there are not many numerical problems that can be solved by hand or during the exam. Okay, some problems can be devised by me, or I can come up with some clever ideas for generating some small problems, but those are very limited. And getting a good marks is should not be your aim in this course. Anyway, all of my students generally get good marks, but you will not learn CFD in details unless you solve practical problems. Okay. So for CFD, you don't have to, or you cannot just rely on solving problems through pen and paper. You have to do some programming. That is a very important part of this course. Without doing any programming, you cannot learn CFD properly. You will float through the course, you will get some grade, maybe you can get very good grade also based on the lecture notes and theory that we study. But later on you sorry for the interruption. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now we can.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My net connection got disconnected. I will switch off my SIM. Otherwise, again, there will be disturbance. I will switch off my SIM. Okay, sorry for the disruption. Okay. So let us come to the evaluation pattern. Why I was saying this solution of practical problems is very important is that the evaluation pattern will be based on that. Okay, instead of any class test or anything like any pen and paper based assignment, I will give some, most probably I will try to give a set or two of problems, pen and paper based problems, which you can learn and which you can use for the exams. But for actually learning CFD, you have to solve one or two programming assignments. So the evaluation pattern will be 80% again is there, which we cannot avoid. Ideally, it should have been less than 80% for CFD course. But as the administration says that it is 80%, so 80% will be there for midterm and final exam. But for the other part, we will have 10% for assignment, one or two assignments, maximum one or two assignments will be there, programming assignments. which you can solve using MATLAB or any other tool. Okay, MATLAB is easy to learn. If you want to use Fortran or C, that also is fine. But typically MATLAB, I would prefer MATLAB, and you can learn also MATLAB because it is very useful for you guys to learn MATLAB. Okay. MATLAB license also is there. You can officially get the license as per the instruction given by CITSC department, means CITSC. Okay. And Fortran and C, of course, are available freely. Compilers are freely available. So programming will be required. 1 or 2 programs you need to write, very short programs for very simple applications, but it will give you the idea about what are the difficulties that you face while developing simple solutions. Like for example, 1D solution of heat transfer problem. You can develop a program and compare it with the analytical solution and see how your program, how the accuracy changes with different aspects of the of your program, like number of grid points, things like that. So 10% marks will be there, 10, not 10%, 10 points will be there for that. Then there will be a project for each of you. There will be a project. Okay, you can do it as a single person or in groups of 2. This project you can start after, means you can start anytime. But after you have learned the course a little bit, you can start working on the project, and we can have a discussion on what type of projects are feasible in the course. So this course project, mostly you can start after the mid-sem, and parallelly during, means your so during the weekend or whenever you have time, you can keep on working on the project. It should not, it cannot be, it need not be a very exhaustive project. Obviously, it's a course project, so it can be a short project also. But it should be feasible. You should be able to show me some results, and there will be a presentation based on this project towards the end of the course. At the end of the course, or either at the end of the course, before the exam or after the exam. Okay. Last year we had taken the presentation after the exam, but we will try to have the presentation before the exam. And that will have actually 20 points. Okay, so I am exceeding the marks, 100 marks. I want to keep 30% marks for this project and assignment. Okay, so you can consider that as 10% bonus marks is there. Okay, out of 100, 110 marks is there. Basically, I want to increase the weightage of the project and assignment. So project will have 20% marks, and you can do it as an individual or as in groups of 2. You can decide later, and we will have a discussion in one of the subsequent classes during mid-sem or after mid-sem, like what are the teams that you have decided, and what are the projects that you are going to do. And I will tell you whether that type of project is feasible or not at that time. Okay, it can be any project. It can be code based. It can be software based, like ANSYS project. It can be more analytical type of, means CFD with some theoretical aspect. It can be say some practical code based practical project, like heating of a say, or air conditioning in this room, or it can be a very complex problem using some software like ANSYS, which you are like more practical problem, like again say some type of combustion or some flow over some complex geometry, flow over fins. Okay, but the project will form an integral part of this course, and it is very important that you do the project as well as possible, because then you can learn properly the different aspects of CFD, and it will help you later on very much in your subsequent courses and subsequent career. Okay. So before we start our discussion on CFD, again some small suggestions. We have already discussed, practice some small CFD program writing. So I will be giving you a couple of assignments, but apart from that, time to time I will tell you that this also can be solved by writing a program. Okay, if you want, you can write that program. Those are optional. I am not going to check them. You don't have to submit them, but if you do those, you will be able to learn CFD in a better way. Okay, so I may say that, okay, you can, like, we can write a program to see this solution. Okay. And if you are not familiar with any programming language, please learn one of the programming languages. Okay. You can use Python also, but I would prefer that you learn MATLAB, because MATLAB is strongly used in industries and in academia. So whatever is the career path that you choose in future, MATLAB will be very helpful for you. The only thing is that in some industries, MATLAB is slightly less used because it is very costly for industrial people. So they may be using Fortran and C, and Fortran and C are very much useful for large scale problems like high performance computing, like parallel programming and things like that, because they are much faster than MATLAB. Okay, but for normal engineering applications, for small problems, MATLAB is very suitable. So I would suggest you learn any of them, but preferably MATLAB. But you can submit the assignment in Fortran or C also, and I am very familiar with Fortran, slightly less familiar with C, and very familiar with MATLAB. Then while solving a real life problem, one suggestion is that you divide this real life problem into a set of simple mathematical steps. Otherwise, you will not be able to solve the real life problem. Say you want to solve the flow over a aircraft wing. Okay, it's a very complex problem. If you do not know how to simplify that problem, you will not be able to solve that problem. So you have to decide to what extent what is the total object you are going to take, whether you are going to take the aircraft wing itself or the entire aircraft body, how much surrounding air you are going to take, what will be the equation. So you have to divide it into simple steps, okay, then solve the problem. And related to this, very important part is that you need to focus on the governing equations and boundary conditions. Many times I see that students actually ignore this part. They are more concerned with meshing, geometry, like how to develop a mesh, and then blindly run the code in ANSYS and get some results. They don't understand whether the results are correct or not, but they get some interesting looking temperature pattern or flow pattern, streamlines, and they show these results without understanding whether these results are correct or not. Okay. But we have to focus on governing equations first, whether the governing equations are still correct for the problem that we have taken. For example, we know that it's a very turbulent problem, but we have not taken turbulence equation into account. Then the results obviously will not be correct. Similarly, in many cases, I see that boundary conditions are not taken correctly. We will see what I mean by incorrect boundary conditions and what are boundary conditions. Okay. But at the boundary of the domain, you have to take the correct assumptions. For example, flow through a cylinder, we know that near the cylinder wall, there should be no slip boundary condition. If you take another type of condition, your solution will be different. Okay, you will not be able to capture the shear stress correctly. So this aspect also you should be very familiar with and very much keep in your mind. Why I am saying this? It looks very trivial, but I am saying this because I have seen many times that whenever you do some project based on CFD, you just try to develop the geometry and just run the default equations or default solver that is present in the software tool like ANSYS or Start CCM Plus, whatever tool is there, or COMSOL. You just run the equations and show some results. You do not there is a lack of understanding of whether the equations are correctly being taken or correctly being solved. So that's why whenever we are using some tool also, we have to understand that the tool is just blindly running the solution algorithm. It is up to us, the engineers, to decide whether we have correctly modeled the governing equations to be solved by the tool or not. Okay. Otherwise, it will be some junk input and junk output will come out of the software. So we have to be very careful about that. So I am going to take a short break at this point, and then we will start our basic discussion of CFD. First, we will go through a few slides, and from the next class onward, or next to next class onward, we will actually jump into the mathematics of CFD, and we will go through class notes. Okay, and if I need to explain something, I will also use say tablet and draw something on your screen. But mostly we will go through class notes. Any questions up to this point related to the course structures, project, marking scheme, class timings, anything else which you feel, curriculum?
No,
This batch
sir.
is very silent. You have to be more talkative. Talkative means talk talk with me, not talk with each other. This kind of silence is it's difficult to teach if it's a very silent environment in this type of online mode. You should be more proactive. Okay. So let us take a break of 5 minutes. You can be online or you can take a break of 5 minutes, and we will continue after this break. Okay. From next class onwards, I will take manual attendance for this course because the number of students is good, only 28. We can go for manual attendance, and it is also good in the sense that the number of students is such that individual projects can be done, and I can devote time for that. For power plant engineering course, we will have we will not have manual attendance. I will download the Excel sheet and upload it, and academic section is going to monitor the attendance. But this case, I will personally see the attendance. So after 5 minutes, again I will join. So I am back. We'll again start. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Recording is still going on. Yes. So as I said initially, so I hope you can see the screen. Please confirm.
Yes, sir.
Good. So initially for first 1 or 2 classes, we will go through some slides to understand what basically is CFD. Okay, I'm telling every time CFD, CFD, but what is CFD and what is its importance and what are the application areas where CFD is very important, where it is used basically, and why is it used? Okay, things like that. So we'll try to understand. Then we will go into our governing questions, into the actual course structure. And these slides again, I will share with you. Already I have shared with you. Let me just check once. It is there in the file section of your team for this computational fluid dynamics course. You can download from there. Okay, it is there. Can you see in full screen mode?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So what is CFD? Okay, so before trying to start the course, we need to know what exactly is CFD or what exactly is computational fluid dynamics. Okay. So to do that, what we are going to do, we are going to start with an example. Okay, a simple example. Say we have a cylinder or a cylindrical pipe as shown in this diagram, and we want to see how the velocity profile changes with time and space in this cylinder, within this cylinder, if it is subjected to some flow from one side. Okay, so you have a cylinder and we are providing a flow with a constant or uniform velocity from one side, and within the cylinder the flow velocity changes. Initially the flow velocity changes with time until it reaches a steady state, and after it reaches a steady state it does not change with time. But there is difference in velocity profile with space, as you can see here. Initially it is uniform, then it goes to more and more towards a parabolic profile. And you have studied in fluid mechanics that there is something called an entry length or entrance length, after which it attains a fully developed profile, and there is no change in the velocity profile after that, after it attains a fully developed profile. Okay, so to study this problem in real life, so you have a cylinder, we want to find out the flow velocity, how it changes with space. Okay, what can we do? So we have 3 options for us. The first and the most basic option is to consider the equation for flow through this cylinder. So in this case the equation is the Navier-Stokes equation. Then we need to simplify that equation. Okay, so the Navier-Stokes equation is a general equation, but for this particular case the equation can be simplified to a large extent. How will we simplify that equation? For example, in 3D, in a cylindrical coordinate, the Navier-Stokes equation may have 3 components: the z directional component along the flow direction, then the r direction component along the radius, along this vertical side, and the theta direction component along the theta direction, along the circular direction, which cannot be shown in this diagram. It is along the theta direction or along the angular direction. Okay, and if there is no variation for a simple flow through a cylinder, the theta direction variation will not be there. So that equation can be ignored, and any variation with theta direction, any term which has theta direction variation, can also be ignored. Similarly, we can, for the fully developed region, we can also ignore any variation with z direction, because with z there will not be any change. But for this entry length or the entrance region, we have to consider variation with z direction. Okay, so anyway, we can simplify the equation and then try to solve the equation with appropriate boundary condition. What is the boundary condition for this case? What is the
No slip
boundary?
condition at the walls of the cylinder.
Yes, no slip conditions.
And
Okay.
at center dv by dz is 0.
That is not a boundary. That's a good point, but
That
that
is
is
not
not
it.
a condition. Okay. Boundary
Uh-huh.
condition is only defined at the boundary. So it is an internal point that is output of the or you can say that is the solution, part of the solution. But we can solve in a half domain or in an axisymmetric form where the domain is up to this point only. In that case, this will become the boundary, as we will see later. And then you have to put a boundary condition at this point. And then what you have told is correct. Del u del y will be equal to 0. Okay, variation of u with y direction is 0 at this point. Slope of this is 0. So we can solve this governing equation with the appropriate boundary condition, and we will be able to find that for the fully developed region, it is a parabolic flow. Okay, our solution will come as a function of r square. Okay, 1 minus r square by something like that. Small r is the radius at any point, and capital R is say radius of the entire cylinder. So it will come as 1 minus r square by capital R square something into some function. So this is how we can solve a problem. This is known as analytical method or analytical solution, where you are actually solving the governing equation after simplifying this. What is the advantage of this method? One advantage is that if you can correctly capture the,
result.
yes, if you can correctly capture the physics of the problem, you will get actual result, exactly correct result. But you have to capture the exact physics. Okay, if the physics is not correct, or if you simplify too much, you will not get the exact result. But if you can actually capture, so for this problem, you can actually capture the physics. It's a simple problem. You can actually capture the physics using the simplifications, and you can solve to get the exact result, exactly correct result. Okay. Second advantage is that typically analytical solutions can be, once it can be derived, then you can solve them very easily, means with very less time. But initial solution may be very difficult. Okay, so initially the person who is going to first time solve the equation, that may be very difficult. Lot of mathematicians devote lot of time for solving complex, more and more complex problems to find analytical solution. It may not be even clear whether analytical solution exists or not. For example, this analytical solution was developed at some point of time by someone, right? So there are Poiseuille equation, then there are Couette flow equations you must have studied in fluid flow. These have been developed analytically. Okay, but even for more complex problem, there need not be analytical solution. Means there can be a situation where analytical solution does not exist. When I say analytical solution does not exist, I mean closed form solution, like nice solution in the form of x, y, u, v, like in the form of a like u is equal to 1 minus x square plus y square, like this form of solution does not exist. Okay, solution will exist, but not in a closed form analytical solution. Similarly, if the problem becomes slightly complicated, finding analytical solution is difficult. So for fully developed region, it is very easy. But if you want to consider this hydrodynamic entrance region, then because there is variation with z direction, it will be much more difficult. Then you have to solve for the boundary layer evolution. And for the boundary layer, again, you can take some assumptions, and again, it can be simplified. So it is possible to solve using some, say, either using scaling method or using some uh, change or say similarity solution or conversion of variables by developing new variables which are function of two or more variables. Okay, to simplify the solution, it is possible. So this is one method. If an analytical solution is not possible, say the problem is much more complicated, not simple as that, but a more complicated problem, then what is our other option? There is always another option that is available, which is experimentation. Okay, and from antiquity, from long back, historically, people have been performing experiments even without knowing the physics or without knowing the correct equations. You can always do a trial and error based experiment to find out or to design different variable, different things, right? So for this case, for this simple case, we can do an experiment. We can take a cylinder and we can have a source of say air from a compressor or from some other like a fan. Okay, and we can put some probes inside this domain. Probes can be for measuring the velocity or pressure. So for measuring velocity, we can put some anemometers or some other probes inside, and then we can actually measure the velocity with time and with space at different points, and we will be able to draw the velocity profile. Now we have to be careful in experiments. We cannot put very large number of probes because then they themselves will disrupt the flow pattern, and the flow pattern will be influenced by the probes. So you have to use a limited number of probes, okay, because they don't have infinitesimal size. You have a finite size of the probes, so they will disrupt the flow pattern. So you will, so for example, I can use 10 probes, okay, or 11 probes at equal distances at say not this point, these points, here one, here one, here one. So 7 or 8 probes, and each probe will give me a velocity. So this probe gives us a velocity equal to this probe gives us a velocity equal to this. Then by joining those velocities, I can get the velocity profile. I would have gotten a more, like ideally we would have gotten a more accurate profile if I had increased the number of probes. But as I have said, by increasing the number of probes, the flow pattern itself will get disrupted, and as a result, your solution may become more inaccurate with larger number of probes. On the other hand, if you keep on reducing the number of probes, then again you will get a very inaccurate solution. For example, if I only have 3 probes, say one probe here, then one at the middle and one here. So you will have 3 velocities, one this velocity, this velocity, this velocity. So you will not be able to capture the parabolic shape in a nice manner. What you will get is a more like a triangular shape. Okay. So you will not be able to know that actually the flow pattern is parabolic. If you do not know anything about flow, just based on the experiment you are trying to predict, you will say that flow pattern is triangular in nature, but which obviously is not correct. So these are some of the difficulties in experiments. We will discuss more about them later today. But there are difficulties in experiment, and obviously experiments are more costly also to perform. Okay, but you can get the advantage is that you can get the exact representation. Like in real life problem, whatever say if there is some heat loss, if there is, like we also consider thermal aspect, if there is some heat loss or if there is some frictional effect or something else is going on, okay, everything will be captured in the realistic manner, in a realistic manner in the experiments, okay, which may not be captured in the analytical solution. So that is one advantage. Then, but again, as I am saying, these are very costly, okay. And if you want to perform repeated experiments, it takes a lot of time and it is very costly. So if I want to study the effect of radius of the pipe and length of the pipe, so I have to actually make these pipes or cast these pipes or develop these actual pipes. Okay, so if I want to study five lengths and 5 different radius, I have to create 25 pipes and perform experiments based on them, which is a very costly affair. So the third option, which has come into picture in the recent decades, is to go for computational solution, okay, or numerical solution. What is numerical solution? In numerical solution, again you have the same governing equations like the analytical equations, same governing equations. So governing equation cannot change, right? So if you have flow in the domain, the basic conservation of flow is still maintained. So ultimately in physics you have some basic conservation laws which cannot be violated. For example, from Newton's law we know that the momentum is conserved unless if there is some force acting upon it. So that also will cause a change in momentum, but momentum is conserved. And from that Newton's law we know that momentum equations can be derived, right? Similarly, we know from first law of thermodynamics that energy is conserved, and from that the energy equation can be derived. So conservation of energy, so conservation of momentum, conservation of energy, conservation of mass, these are some fundamental aspects of physics which cannot be violated, and based on this we have the governing equations. So now how we solve the governing equation, that is the question. So If it can be simplified to a very simple form, we can use analytical method. Otherwise, we cannot use analytical method. Then we have to resort to something which is known as numerical method. So we have to simplify these governing equations in a different manner, not like analytical solution, in a different manner, so that the derivatives can be converted to algebraic equations. And we will see that this can be done if we divide the geometry into small parts. Okay, into small parts. I will have some examples later. Like, so this geometry can be divided into small parts like this. So if the parts are very small, we can approximate the governing equation for each part as a linear equation. Okay, instead of a partial differential equation, and then solve all this linear equation for each part. So if I have 1,000 parts, I can solve them together to get the velocity or temperature for each of this control volume. Okay, so what you will get is a discrete solution, one temperature and one velocity for each point. Okay, similar to experiments, and then you have to join those points to get the actual variation. So unlike analytical solution, which will give you a continuous solution, here also you will get discrete velocity variables. So say 100, if I divide this height into 100 parts, you will get velocity at 100 points. But you can now divide the domain into large number of parts, because it is not going to play any, or it is not going to cause any obstruction, because it's just numerical you are doing. So unlike experiments, you can divide into large number of parts, and you can get a very nice approximation of the flow. Obviously, it will not be 100% accurate unless you can divide it into 100% accurate or 100 means infinitely large number of parts, but it will give you a pretty accurate solution. And in cases where analytical solution is not possible, numerical solution is still possible. Okay. Any questions? So this numerical solution, or the technique for numerical solution, various techniques are together known as computational fluid dynamics. Okay, numerical solution for heat transfer and fluid flow. So this is known as computational fluid dynamics, or CFD in common language, as you know. You can also ask questions through the chat window if you want. I will monitor the chat if you don't want to interrupt the lecture, but feel free to ask questions. Okay, so we have learned about what is CFD, and we have also discussed briefly what is its advantage and disadvantage. Advantage is that wherever analytical solution is not possible, we can use CFD. And another advantage is that compared to experiments, cost is much less. Okay, relatively less. Much less is not the correct one. CFD solution can also be very costly because you need computational resources, and computational time is costly. But it is less costly as compared to experiments, particularly for cases where you need to study the multiple aspect of or variation of multiple parameters. Say I was saying 5 different lengths and 5 different diameters of the cylinder. For CFD, it is not a very difficult problem. You can just vary the length and diameter of the geometry, and you can run the simulations and get the result. You won't have to make 25 different pipes or tubes for solving the problem. Okay, so that is an advantage as compared to experiments. And as compared to analytical solution, the main advantage is that you can solve for many complex situations, like as shown here, I will discuss, which are not possible using analytical method. Okay. So now where CFD is used, or why CFD is used. Okay. So in most of the engineering applications, you will have, for most of the engineering application, you will have very complicated geometry. Okay. So take the example of a flow over a Formula One car. This is a Formula One car prototype. And in Formula One, if you follow, I don't know, many of you may not follow, but if you follow Formula One car racing, or if you have studied about design of any automobile, high-end automobiles, okay, you will know that the aerodynamics plays a very important part, okay, in the design of automobiles, or particularly for Formula One or any racing car, the aerodynamics plays a very important part. So how the flow moves over the car, in between the different parts of the car and below the car, dictates how much drag actually is faced by the car and what is the downforce. Drag, you know what is drag, right? Drag means the resistance to the movement of the car. So you want to reduce the drag as much as possible. What is downforce? Can anyone say what is downforce?
Sir, it is
The force acting downwards to the
Yes.
on the
It is
spoiler.
like yes, lift, you know, right? All of you know lift and drag. So in aircrafts, when we study aircrafts, we want to generate as much lift as possible. But in automobiles, we want to generate as much negative lift, means as much force towards the downward direction as possible. What is the reason for doing that?
Sir, if we move at high speeds, then there is a lift created on the rear wheels, at the rear part of the vehicle. So that's why we install some structures there to,
Not exactly clear.
to get that downward force. Something
This
like that.
the rear wing does not create lift. It actually creates downforce only. The front wing, rear wing, and
Also, not the wheel, but the back part of the vehicle gets
wing.
lifted.
This is the spoiler of the rear wing. The rear wing also creates downforce. Okay, it creates lift towards the bottom direction, towards the bottom. This is necessary to increase the grip. So what happens is that whenever you are moving at high speed, you want to turn, or say instead of straight line, you want to turn in the left or right direction. There is a tendency of the car to skid, right? If you are turning at very high speed, because of centrifugal force, your car will skid towards the outward direction. So you need as much grip as possible from the tires, and the grip will depend on how much force is there towards the downward direction. So as a result, you need to increase the downforce. Even for high end, say for example, if you are moving over a very less friction surface like ice, if you are moving over ice, if there is not much downforce, your car will slide around, right? You will lose the grip. Or you are riding a scooter or a bike, and when you are turning, you know that if you turn at very high speed, your bike can skid and go towards the outward direction. Outward means compared to the turning direction, because of centrifugal action. So if you have good grip, you can turn at higher speed. If you have less grip, say during raining, when it is raining, you have water on the surface, then the grip is poor. You need to turn at a lower speed. To increase the grip, you need to generate more downforce. So the downforce depends on, so downforce is nothing but lift only, lift in the lower negative direction. Okay. So that also needs to be calculated based on the flow pattern. So in this type of complex situation, what can you do? You have two options. You cannot use analytical solution. So either you can perform experiments. How will you perform experiments? Real life move, like using a car and like getting track to run the car, Formula One car, is very costly, right? Track time is very costly and you need lot of fuel also. So what is the option to do experiments on this to calculate lift and drag, downforce and drag?
We use wind tunnels.
You will use wind tunnels. Good. You will have to use wind tunnels. Okay. So what is wind tunnel? You have a large structure through which you pass air through blowers. Okay. And the air flows in a streamlined pattern, and you put the object of interest within this tunnel, and then you study the flow pattern using markers, and you have other devices to calculate to measure the velocity and pressure, and using flow markers you get the flow pattern. Okay. But the main difficulty is that wind tunnels again are very costly, and to create a very large wind tunnel is very difficult. To create a very large wind tunnel which will have very streamlined flow. So generally in wind tunnels will be smaller in size. So you cannot study using full scale model. So you have to use a smaller model like a half scale model, half scale prototype, 50% prototype or 10% prototype, 1/10 of the size of the actual car. Okay, so you devise a prototype which has 10% size of the actual car, but it has all the complexity. And then you put it in the wind tunnel and try to study it. Very large or very large manufacturers like say Ferrari or Mercedes, they will have large scale wind tunnels where they can study 50% prototype or even 100% prototype. Okay, but these are very costly. So experiments are very costly. So the other option that is left to us is to perform CFD analysis, and that is why most of these companies, like say Mercedes, Ferrari, or any other, say Red Bull, if you follow Formula One, or any other high-end car manufacturer like Bugatti and Lamborghini, they will be using lot of CFD to study what is the downforce and what is the drag. Okay. Similarly for aircraft. So aircraft, any aircraft, civilian aircraft or military aircraft, lift and drag are the most important aspect of aircraft, right? You want to reduce the drag and you want to increase the lift. So again, you need CFD, and you cannot perform experiments because the size of the aircraft is so large that you cannot do internal study, and running experiments using real aircrafts obviously is not possible. So there are two options left to you. One is that when the aircrafts are actually running in real life application, like passenger aircrafts are running, you collect data from the aircrafts, and using that data, you try to get some empirical correlations, or you use CFD study to get or to calculate the lift and drag force. You cannot use analytical solution because you cannot approximate the geometry. Like some analytical solution obviously is possible. People have come up with very clever idea using coordinate transformation, how to calculate the lift and drag for the aircraft wing. There are very clever ideas where you can convert the aerofoil structure into a spherical structure through coordinate transformation and calculate the lift and drag, and again revert back to the aerofoil structure. But for the entire complex aircraft, it is too difficult. Even inside the aircraft also, the engines flow through the engines or combustion in the gas turbine, or say in aerospace industry, other types of like space industry, flow through the rocket nozzles or flow in the rocket engine. That also needs CFD. Similarly, other areas we are going to cover later on today or in the next class. We are depending on how much time is available to us. There are a lot of other aspects. So some other important aspects are, say again in engineering, because we are mechanical engineers. We need to know from the aspect of engineering devices. Cooling of turbine blades is a very important aspect. So generally aircraft fly using gas turbines, and gas turbine blades are the most costly part of the aircraft. Okay. If you can increase the temperature that can be withstood by the gas turbine blades, you can increase the efficiency of the gas turbine engines, and that is one of the most important areas of development. And to increase the temperature that can be withstood by the gas turbine engines, we need better and better cooling methods. So some of the cooling methods are to introduce flow channels through the inside the gas turbine blades. Okay. So these type of studies are being done very extensively in the companies. Like for example, if you get a job in GE, General Electric, or Rolls-Royce, which have presence in India, okay, or Boeing. Okay. So Boeing does not manufacture engines. So Rolls-Royce or GE, they manufacture the engine and supply them to Boeing or Airbus. So in those cases, there will be entire teams which are working on cooling or aircraft gas turbine blades. Okay. This is another important area. Similarly, the materials aspect. So how to generate the gas turbine blade? Like what method to use? Nowadays, you cannot just simply cast a gas turbine blade because the properties will be very poor. Your competitor will be so much advanced as compared to you that you will not be able to compete in the market. So you need very advanced techniques such as directional solidification. We will study about like briefly. I will focus on them later on. Directional solidification or generation of single crystals. And to study those, we need, these processes are very complex. Okay, you have to solve heat transfer, fluid flow, mass transfer, species conservation, phase change. These type of complex problems can be either solved using experiments, but experiments are very costly. Experiments for single crystal is very costly. So you need to use CFD method. Nowadays, CFD has come a long way forward. So it is possible to solve these problems using CFD. Even 10 or 20 years back, it was not possible to do it. Only in recent years, we are able to solve these problems using CFD. Okay. Previously, the only option was to do experiments, to perform experiments. So if you want to find what is the best structure in terms of strength, you needed to do 100 experiments, and based on the 100 experiments, like based on trial and error and some good engineering guesses, you have to develop the or design the blade. But nowadays what we do is that we use a combination of experiments and CFD. Experiments are still needed. You cannot just rely on CFD because results may not be accurate. So once you develop a CFD model, you have to compare with some experimental result, which is known as validation. Again, we are going to study it later. But we can reduce the number of experiments from say 100 to only 4 experiments. And then we can perform the other aspects or see the other aspects using CFD. Okay. So like this, we can reduce the cost. So there are entire teams in these organizations which work on the materials aspect, cooling aspect, aerodynamics, combustion. In say automobile industry also, say if you join Tata Motors or say General Motors, Ford or any other, say Maruti. In Indian companies, it is slightly less used, but in multinational companies, you will see that lot of work goes on CFD or within the combustion chamber, flow around the outside of the car, aerodynamics, inside the car for say passenger comfort, how the air conditioning takes place. All these are very important. Okay, there are other applications. We'll come into those later. But I hope this gives you a clear idea about why CFD is needed. Okay, what are the drawbacks of experiment and analytical solution, and why CFD is needed. Before that also we were managing. You can ask me, but say during Second World War there was no CFD. CFD has evolved in the last 30-40 years. Okay, it was not possible. There were no computers, no CFD. So how did we develop such complex aircrafts during Second World War or First World War or around that time, even passenger aircrafts in 1950s? All these were based on empirical correlations, trial and errors, and experiments. Okay, and as a result, these were very costly. Development process was very costly, and the efficiencies were very low. So nowadays we can go to much higher efficiency. Okay, by using CFD methods. So things have evolved along from those times. Okay, so CFD plays a very important role. Any questions?
No, sir.
One question I am going to ask, because you are not asking a question. How do we know that the CFD results that we get are correct? We will get some result, right? And let's say this result, this looks nice, colorful result, pressure variation, temperature variation, nice colorful results are there. And if I show it to some audience, they will get impressed. Ah, such beautiful result. But how will you know that exactly these results are correct or not? Means this may look correct to you. Yes.
In the starting, you said about those 3 parameters, no, stability, convergence, and something else. From those, you can find out if the result is
physical. Yes. So how will you know that? So that is one good point. Correct. Very good point. We can see whether the solutions are converged or not. You will learn later what is convergence. Means the solutions has come to a given value and it is not moving from that value. We will learn those later. Okay. Then there is something called physical consistency. Whether the problem is physically consistent or not. Solution, not the problem. Means say if I give a boundary condition, you are trying to solve heating in a tube. Okay. Flow through a pipe, like this example, flow through a pipe, and you have some heated wall. Wall is heated at 340 Kelvin, and flow comes at 300 Kelvin. So we know that because the maximum temperature is 340 Kelvin and the flow comes at 300 Kelvin, the temperature anywhere within the domain has to be between 300 and 340. Now at some point, if I get a temperature of 500 Kelvin, I know that it cannot be correct. It is not physically consistent because it has gone beyond the maximum temperature that is provided. There is no heat source, so temperature cannot go beyond 340. If I get a temperature of say minus 10 Kelvin, obviously it is not physically correct, right? Any situation, if you get a negative temperature in Kelvin, it cannot happen in real life. But numerically, you can get the result. Because you are just using some mathematical calculation, you may get temperature in minus 10 Kelvin. But if you show it in a conference, everyone will laugh at you that, oh, he is showing minus 10 Kelvin result. But I have seen results shown by students like 0 Kelvin or something like that. So you have to be careful that the results are physically consistent, and then convergence and accuracy also. And the other way that we have to be careful is that directly we do not show the results. When we develop a model, new model means you write your own code or you are using a software like Console or ANSYS or Star CCM Plus. First, you compare the result with a known result. Okay, known result can be from experiments or some analytical solution. For example, flow through the cylinder is known, right? We know the analytical solution for this. The exact solution is known. Analytical solution is also known as exact solution. Now, if I develop the same geometry in ANSYS Fluent and use the same flow velocity and then compare my result with the analytical solution, we can check whether we are getting similar result or not. What is the order of accuracy? Okay, what is the percentage of error? If the error is very small, we can say that our model is correct. If you have developed your own code for solving Navier-Stokes equation, you can compare with this known solution and check that whether your code gives the correct solution or not. Okay, if it gives the correct solution for one or two problems, you can say that our code is validated with analytical solution. It is typically known as verification. If you compare it with the experiment, you can say that our code is validated with experimental results. Okay, so if I solve this flow over this structure and if known result is there from experiment, and if I compare and find that lift coefficient and drag coefficient are of similar nature, may not be exact, I can say that our code is validated. Now I can use the same code for different variations, like now the length of the car is increased, or if I use a flow over a aircraft. So because the code is already validated for another case, we can assume that at least we are using a validated code. But still we have to be careful. We have to see that the result is physically consistent or not. But at least we are using a validated code. Okay. So yes, so we have to be very careful about what solution we are getting instead of just blindly showing the solution. Okay. So as I have already explained, so just this is outlined here. Why CFD is used? We have already discussed this, but let me just again summarize this. So if we use simulation based on like if you use simulation instead of experiments, it is more cost effective and less time is required as compared to experiments. Experiments are more costly and more time consuming. So you can use less time and less expense to get similar results. And as compared to analytical solution is not possible in many cases. So you can use simulations in those cases. CFD solving is known as simulation. Okay, when you use a CFD algorithm and solve, it is known as a simulation. You are simulating the real life scenario. Means you are replicating it and simulating the real life scenario. Then this is not the only reason. Cost is not the only reason. Cost or time. So time and cost both, like monetary cost as well as time is also one sort of cost, right? Like one sort of expense. So if you can reduce the time, you can reduce the cost. So this is not the only reason. There can be many situations in which analytical solution is not possible because the situation is very complex, as well as experimental solution is also not possible. For example, say the scale of the simulation is very different from our lab scale. So this scale cannot be captured at the lab scale. For example, you want to solve for aircrafts, like I was explaining, or large ships like aircraft carrier. You want to design the hydrodynamics around a aircraft carrier. What will be the drag around a aircraft carrier? Okay. So these are very large scale structures and you cannot develop a prototype. So you have to develop a scale prototype and it will not be able to accurately capture the dynamics of the flow around the large scale structure. Okay. Then there can be other scales which are also very difficult to capture, like at nano level or at very small structures. Okay, where you cannot use any probes. So flow at nanoscale or microscale, very small microscale structure, microfluidics, difficult to use any probes at the scale. So you cannot actually capture the velocity or temperature using normal probes. You have to come up with some innovative ideas. Okay, like say X-ray imaging or some sort of imaging technique you have to come up with. or say using SEM like electron microscopy or atomic force microscopy. There are different methods. So in those cases, it is very difficult to perform experiments and get data, but you can use CFD experiments, okay, CFD simulations. But remember that again, we cannot violate continuum. So it has to be at a scale where atomic level physics is not very important. We can average the atomic level physics, okay. For example, Brownian motion is not very important. So you have to be careful about that. Then there are situations which are very hazardous. As a result, so it is the scale is okay, but the situation is so hazardous that you cannot perform experiments, like explosions or very radiative environment. So say some situation is there where you need to find out what is the temperature change, but the radiation is very high, like in the nuclear. Say you are studying about nuclear power plant meltdown, or disaster scenarios in nuclear power plants. Obviously, you cannot do experiments. So, but you want to see what is the temperature evolution with time. If a reactor melts down, or the cooling is not sufficient, like what happened in Chernobyl. Okay, in those cases, then you have to use CFD studies. You have no other way, because obviously you cannot perform experiments, and you cannot get data also, because these occur very randomly. So in 20-year period, once it might have occurred in Chernobyl or in Fukushima. So you have very less number of data points. So you have to perform CFD. Explosions also, like detonations. You can perform control explosions, but very large scale explosion, you will have very limited data. Then you have to use CFD. Then very hazardous, like very polluted environment, or say you have poisonous gases like carbon monoxide or sulfur dioxide, which forms sulfuric acid. Then again, you cannot do experiments. You have to go for CFD studies. Okay. Then the third situation may be that the physics itself is too complex to capture using experiments at lab scale, and you cannot perform experiments because the size or scale is too large, like weather prediction. You cannot perform experiments at lab scale on how a cyclone evolves, but you can predict using numerical methods. And you have seen that nowadays we get very good predictions, like for the cyclone. What was the name of the cyclone? Cyclone Fani was here, right? I guess you guys were here at that time, or 2019. You were here, right?
We were here.
Cyclone.
Yes, sir, we are here.
Okay. So you must have seen that the predictions were quite good. Means even before the cyclone impacts or causes landfall, you know what will be the approximate direction and what will be the approximate velocity of wind for a long time in future, like for the next day, next hour, next day, next 2-3 days. With good accuracy, we can predict. These are based on complex either empirical solutions or CFD solutions. Okay. And you cannot obviously perform experiments, but you can gather data whenever cyclones are there. But again, because there are limited number of cyclones, you get only limited number of data, and based on this, it is difficult to perform, say, or devise empirical relations, but you can validate your model. Then say planetary boundary layer. So remember that planets are also like objects, even though they are very large. They are also typical objects, and the flow around the atmosphere around the planet, that also has a boundary layer. That boundary layer is very thick, but still it has a boundary layer, and that boundary layer, flow within the boundary layer, causes all this large scale flow around the planet, large scale air movement, large scale say what is it? It is not exactly storms, but there are large scale movements of air, which are known as air streams. Okay, at high altitude there are air streams going from one region to another region. Okay, large scale airflow pattern. So these all depend on planetary boundary layer. One very familiar example for you guys, any of you who are interested in astronomy, or even for normal people also, you know that for Jupiter there is a large red spot, which is actually a flow pattern. Okay, it's like a large storm that is going on for many years, 30-40 years, and it changes with time. So it is not a static pattern. It is a large scale flow pattern. Because Jupiter, the surface is gaseous, you have large scale turbulence patterns also. You can see nice turbulent patterns also. Let me see whether I can get a Jupiter Scooty comes. I guess is more important nowadays. So this type of observation, this flow pattern, or say you can see very nice turbulent structures here. I hope you can see them. This is better. You can see vortex shading and nice turbulent structure here. So not exactly vortex shading at this scale, but vortex generation. You can see large scale vortex. Okay, my terminology is not correct, but the turbulence, fluid turbulence. So this type of things also can be predicted by CFD, but obviously you cannot perform experiments in this situation. Okay. Then how the stars evolve with time. So those type at those length scale also, again, obviously you cannot perform experiments, but you can predict using CFD study how the stars evolve with time. So stellar evolutions. I am just giving you some examples. There are hundreds of other examples. I am giving you some examples which are interesting to me, and which you can notice that experiments or analytical solutions are not possible because the situation is so complex, or the scale is so large, or it is hazardous, that you have to go for CFD solution. You can ask how we were calculating previously, because previously also we were predicting weather, like 100 years back. We were using empirical correlations based on actual data. So if you had data for say 1000 cyclones, based on that you used to fit some curve that if the temperature is so much and so varies like this, if the cooling rate is thus, then there is this much chance of formation of cyclone. Like this we were doing, but we are not actually solving using CFD. Exact flow pattern we were not getting. Is it clear? So I hope it gives you a very clear picture of how important is CFD in normal engineering application, in other complex say, research areas. If you are a researcher in any field, I have not shown all the areas here. We will show it. I will show it in the next class. If you are a biologist, if you are a mechanical engineer, nowadays a lot of mechanical engineers are working in biological areas because mechanics and biology has become combined as biomechanics, okay, or bioheat transfer. If you are a materials expert, again, a lot of interdisciplinary areas in mechanical engineering and materials. Then if you are a physicist, mechanical engineering obviously is part of physics. So if you are a physicist, if you are a thermodynamics person, heat transfer person, if you are a researcher working on flow pattern, any area, if you are an astrophysicist, geologist, okay, marine biologist, all of them require CFD. If you are a medicinal, if you are working in medicinal area, we have published paper even in cancer research in recent years, okay, based on CFD modeling. So all these require CFD modeling. How much time is left today? Still some time is there. So we will start going through some more aspects of CFD, and then we will continue this discussion in the next class. What is the basic strategy of CFD? Till now we have just seen why CFD is important, but what exactly is CFD? Means what are the steps that are required? Okay, in a very broad term, like if you have to explain, so somebody may ask you that, oh, you are studying CFD, please explain what is CFD to me. So how will you explain in 2 minutes? Okay, what is the basic strategy of CFD? So that is what is outlined here. So what we do is we divide a domain into a discrete number of, discrete means fixed number of, fixed is not the correct word, okay, finite number of subsections. Okay, you divide the domain into a finite number of subsections. This is known as mesh generation. Okay, so I will show a problem and show an example, through an example, the steps. Okay, so for example, if you need to see how the, so you have a problem where there is a bottle and it is filled, some liquid is poured from the top using a nozzle. We want to see how the flow pattern varies when the bottle is being filled, and say there is some temperature, it is a heated fluid, how the temperature also changes with time. First step is to divide this domain into small sections like shown here. Okay, small parts. Very regular part you can see here. It can be irregular also. This is known as mesh generation. If you have done used ANSYS or any other software, you know what is mesh generation. But in general, this is known as dividing the domain into some discrete subsections. Okay. Now you formulate the governing equations for this problem. Okay. What are the governing equations? So if I want to solve for flow and heat transfer, what will be our governing equations? It will be the Navier-Stokes equation, continuity equation, and energy conservation equation. Okay. But you have to tailor it for your problem. By tailoring it means that if you are solving this problem in 3D, you need 3D Navier-Stokes equation. I can also solve it in 2D. I can ignore the depth. I can just consider that a cross section along the middle like this. Okay, and I can solve it in 2D. Then you will have a 2D Navier-Stokes equation. Similarly, the energy equation. I may neglect the radiation term because the temperature may not be very high for radiation. So what are the assumptions and what are the exact governing equations for your problem by suitable assumptions and suitable simplification by neglecting radiation, by neglecting, so there are no chemical reaction, for example, here. So then there are no terms associated with chemical reaction. So accordingly, you have to consider. And then you have to convert this governing equation into simple equation for each subdomain. Okay. So the governing equation is valid for the entire domain, the Navier-Stokes equation. It is also valid for each of these subdomain. So Navier-Stokes equation is valid for this, for this, for this. So for each of these subdomain, it is valid. So now you have to simplify this Navier-Stokes equation or the energy balance equation for each subdomain into a simple algebraic equation. And it is possible because you have taken these subdomains to be very small. We can approximate the derivatives by their linear approximation, like dx dy or dx dt. I can write it as x1 minus x2 by delta t, something like that, delta x by delta t, x1 minus x2 by t1 minus t2. So I can convert a difference derivative into a algebraic form, and this is okay if the domains are very small in size. Okay, and at the limit, if they approach infinitesimal size, means the number of domains become infinitely large and the size becomes infinitely small, your solution or your algebraic equation will become exactly similar to your differential equation, means the governing equation. Then solve these simple equations with additional information from boundary condition. Now you have to again suitably take the boundary condition. For example, if the bottle is adiabatic, I have to take that temperature boundary condition is adiabatic. So there is no heat loss from the wall. Similarly, no slip condition will be there for the flow. So for all boundaries, boundary condition is needed, not only for the inlet. Okay, there is only inlet. So then at the inlet, what is the flow velocity? What is the temperature? That also I have to take. So suitable boundary conditions needs to be taken depending on the complexity of the problem. And then using those equations and using the boundary condition and all the equations, you need to solve them for all the domains. So if I have 1000 parts, if I have divided the geometry into 1000 parts, I will have 1000 equations for energy, 1000 equations for x momentum, 1000 equations for y momentum. We need to solve these algebraic equations simultaneously to get the u, v, temperature, all these variables. Okay. And if the problem varies with time, we need to again and again solve it by changing the time, and it is known as a transient problem. And finally, when you get the result, what you will get is some discrete results. You will not get nice looking plots like this. Okay, what you will get is at these points you will get the temperature, pressure, velocity. So say at 1000 points you will have 1000 temperatures, 1000 pressure, 1000 velocity variables. Now you have to plot based on this. You have to join those lines, or you have to plot contours, or you have to join the lines like this to show it graphically to your audience. Okay, so this is known as post processing, and also analyzing the results. So how to plot these results based on the discrete points, and then we want to analyze the result. Analyze means, say you will get velocity, temperature, then how to get the heat flux. heat flux is minus K dt dx. Just based on the temperature and X values, I can calculate the heat flux. So we don't need to solve again the CFD problem. We can solve just based on the time, the temperature that we have obtained, we can solve to find the heat flux at any point. Similarly, shear stress. So you know what is shear stress? It is mu del u del y. Okay, in a 2D problem. So if I know the velocity vectors u and its variation with y, I can find out the shear stress just by calculating after the solution. Okay, after the CFD solution. This is known as post processing. If you want to calculate the drag coefficient, lift coefficient, okay, Nusselt number, these are all part of post processing. So like this, we have to solve it. So these are the basic steps. Okay, you discretize the domain into a small set of or a set of subsections which are known as control volumes. The process is known as meshing or discretization. Then you devise the governing equations for that domain. Then for each subdomain, you devise simple equations based on the overall governing equation. Solve these simple equations using some method, which we'll study later, and get the variable values like temperature, pressure, U, V, W, velocity at this each of this small volume, and then post process to obtain the required result like lift, drag, heat transfer coefficient or Nusselt number. Okay. We will continue our discussion in the next class again through another example. Say if I want to study the drag coefficient for a Tyrannosaurus rex. Okay, how much is how aerodynamic is body structure is. So how to do that CFD study, and even for this bottle filling problem also we will revise once again what are the steps, and we will go through some interesting things, and then we will go through some of the applications of CFD, like in some more details: aerospace, automobile, power generation, cooling, material processing, biomedical, chemical reaction, marine, oil and gas, sports. A lot of applications, limitations, and I will show some results to give you a feel that we can also do similar kind of work. I will show you some results from our group. Okay, just as an introduction, that we can also do similar type of problems, even in our lab, or in similarly, say other professors are also working. Dr. Venugopal, Dr. Bhumkar, Dr. Shashidhar, Dr. Rath on similar type of results. Okay. And we will continue our discussion. Next class is today morning from 9 o'clock. Okay. So we'll stop here. Any questions on anything regarding the course structure or anything else? I will stop the recording.